Over to you, Annette.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Good morning, everyone. My name is Annette Pittman, and I'm the CEO of Create New South Wales. I'm coming to you today from Gadigal land, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and my deep respect to all of our First Nations colleagues that are on this call. It's wonderful to meet with you today to discuss the transformative changes that we're making to our arts and cultural funding program. These important reforms are a key deliverable in the New South Wales Government's 10-year Creative Communities policy, which we announced in December 2023. Last year, my team and I joined Arts Minister John Graham on a tour of the state to hear directly from the sector about your aspirations for arts and culture and how we at Create New South Wales can improve the way that we serve our creative communities. Funding reform was unsurprisingly a top priority for many of you, so we're delighted to have announced these important changes. From Broken Hill to Bundjalung Country to Bega in the south, right across Sydney, we listened to the feedback and the Creative Communities policy articulates and responds to the many conversations we had with arts practitioners and organizations across the state. The funding reform is a major step forward in implementing our policy. This is about making it simpler, faster, and more efficient to apply for our grants and fairer to ensure that the entire sector gets to benefit from our funding programs. I thank you for joining us today, and I will now hand you over to my team.
Thank you so much, Annette. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Karen Rogers and I'm Director Arts at Create New South Wales. Thank you, Ian. Next slide. Just back one, please. Create New South Wales acknowledges the First Nations people across the state and their continued connection to the lands, waters and culture. We respect elders past and present and the role that First Nations artists play in contributing to their culture. I would like to acknowledge that today I am on Gadigal land and I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend those respects to all the First Nations people joining us on this webinar today and to all the First Nations colleagues that we all work with. I want to acknowledge that wherever we are today, we are all on Aboriginal land, always was and always will be. I just want to begin by doing some housekeeping. Could we please ask that you use the chat to ask any questions as we go along, and we'll address as many of those questions we can at the end of the session. We would also like to ask that you keep your camera and microphone off for the duration of the webinar. I would really like to introduce our Auslan interpreters today. We are very fortunate to have Stephen and Yasmin joining us today, and instructions for captioning are in the chat. And I also just wanted to let you know that this session is being recorded. Thank you, Ian. I wanted to start by outlining why we have reformed the Arts and Cultural Funding Program, what we call the ACFP. Firstly, and importantly, it was to align with the New South Wales Government's Creative Communities policy. We've responded to the issues raised by the sector during the policy consultation, including to prioritise First Nations culture, to simplify grant application and reporting processes by reducing red tape, to provide a more equitable and fairer funding model through a competitive grants process, to increase funding security for the sector with long-term investment options, and to support improved business models to sustain the arts and cultural sector. Thanks, Ian. The key priority areas reflect those of the Creative Communities policy, and for the ACFP include the following: First Nations stories and communities, Western Sydney and/or regional New South Wales, next generation of creatives and content, accessibility and equity, As part of the new program, we will ensure targeted investment addresses these key priority areas. And you can find out more details on each of these key priority areas on the Create New South Wales website. Thanks, Ian. As I've said, we've listened to feedback from the sector and heard that what you wanted was equity and transparency in funding. And to reflect this, we've created a streamlined and accessible program that firstly reduces the number of programs from 14 to 4 core streams. I'm really happy now to introduce Brianna Munting, Senior Manager, Key Arts Organisations at Create, to talk with you about the detail of these new programs. Thanks, Brianna.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everyone. Lovely to see so many people online today. It's fantastic. Our multi-year program really aims to support sustainable arts and cultural organisations across New South Wales. We want to make sure our organisations are able to plan longer term, to share New South Wales stories locally, nationally and internationally, and really focus on developing and delivering diverse arts and cultural activities for New South Wales. We heard you when you told us you no longer want annual funding. It's not working for organisations. So instead, we've created a multi-year program that includes 2, 4 and 8-year funding. Our 2-year funding is really focused on artistic and business innovation. It will enable organisations to build their business models, to look at new business models, and also to be able to plan for a longer period than just an annual program. Our 4-year funding really looks at how we can support strategic partnerships and collaborations across arts organisations and also outside of the arts. And then our 8-year funding program is looking at artistic and cultural leadership, and it's really focused on providing longer term funding to secure the future of our organisations. The design of our multi-year program enables organisations to move between 2, 4 and 8-year at certain points in the funding cycle, and we've done this to meet the changing needs of the sector. In terms of timeline, which I know is always important for everyone, the 8-year funding will open in June, it will close in August, and we'll be looking at notifications in October. The 4-year funding will open in October, closing in December with notifications in March. And our 2-year funding will open in March 2025, close in April 2025 with notifications happening in June. All multi-year funding agreements will start from 2026. Next slide, please, Ian. And we recognise that there is a need for transitional funding because we want to ensure the stability of our arts and cultural sector. So we'll open one round of annual funding in 2024 for programs to be delivered across 2025. And this really ensures there's no gaps in opportunities for funding. So we'll have this transitional year, and then from 2026, we move forward with this new reformed program, which we're so excited about. I'm going to hand over to Senior Manager for Arts Funding and Development, Peter Wood, now.
Thanks, Brianna. Hi, everyone. It is my great pleasure to take you through our project funding reform programs. As has already been discussed, funding for project activities has been reformed in response to consultation from the sector and the commitments and priorities of the new arts and cultural policy, Creative Communities. The new project categories will ensure greater transparency, be more equitable, and allow for simpler application and reporting processes as well. In the same approach as the multi-year program that Brianna's just outlined, reform of these new project categories has been developed to align with the New South Wales Government's Creative Communities policy, and in particular to promote and prioritise First Nations first, respond to feedback received during the policy consultation period, simplify the grant application and reporting processes, improve funding opportunities for professional and skills development for individuals, target investment to address priority areas of the new policy, and to support the growth and development of new work. The project categories will be offered in 2 rounds. Round 1 will open in November this year, 2024, and close in December with notification in March 25. Round 2 will open in March 25, close in April 25, with notification in June. I'll take you through the 4 programs now. Creative Nations, our first one there, is project funding to strengthen First Nations artists, organisations and communities by supporting artistic expression, cultural protocols, Indigenous cultural intellectual property, and to sustain and grow First Nations arts and culture in New South Wales. The funding will enable the creation and presentation of new work, create more employment and professional development opportunities for First Nations artists and cultural workers, invest in First Nations-led organisations and help cultural workers become leaders, enable the sharing of First Nations stories and truth-telling, and support personal community wellbeing and economic development. This grant is valued up to $40,000 for small projects and up to $100,000 for large projects. Next steps. This is a grant that supports professional development and participation in skills and development opportunities. Individual artists and arts workers can apply for up to $10,000 to support professional development opportunities, and this funding will enable career development for artists and cultural workers. It's also aimed to support opportunities that develop cultural leadership skills and knowledge, and it encourages the promotion of professional networking and collaboration. The project or activity in this category must be a clearly defined arts and cultural activity that benefits individual New South Wales artists or arts and cultural workers, and it could include things like workshops and courses, a mentorship program, residencies and fellowships, conferences and networking events. Creative steps. This supports the development of new work by individuals who can apply for up to $40,000 for small projects and up to $100,000 for larger projects. This funding round is open only to individual artists and arts and cultural workers who are encouraged to drive and develop partnerships with arts and cultural organisations to support their new work initiatives. The funding will enable the creation and presentation of new work and access the resources and expertise for individual artists. It's also aimed to facilitate engagement across and access to new work for New South Wales audiences, and also to strengthen the creative ecosystem through collaboration and partnerships. Cultural access. This program supports projects that are led by or support specific communities that reflect the diversity of people in New South Wales. Individuals and organisations not in receipt of multi-year funding can apply for this category. This category has been designed to specifically address the creative community's priorities of inclusivity, accessibility and equity. The funding will enable the creation and presentation of new work designed and led by priority and target creative practitioners, groups and organisations, strengthen communities through equitable access to arts and cultural experiences, and develop diverse cultural leadership within the arts and cultural ecosystem. The grant's valued up to $40,000 for small projects and $100,000 for large projects. Next slide, please, Ian. Regional arts touring continues to provide New South Wales communities with equitable access to arts and cultural experiences. This grant round is open to individual artists and cultural workers, groups and arts and cultural organisations who are touring arts and cultural work across regional New South Wales. The funding will foster access to innovative and diverse arts and cultural presentations, enable the presentation of new work and enhance the visibility of new work by New South Wales artists and arts and cultural workers. Individuals and organisations can apply for this grant, and they can apply for small tours from 5,000 to 60,000 and large tours from 60,000 up to 120,000. There will be 2 rounds of regional arts touring offered. Round 1 opening in August this year, closing in September with notification in December, and round 2 opening in January, closing in March and notification in June. Thanks, Ian.
I think this is me. some of the strongest feedback we heard was to make applications and reporting simpler, and we've really done that. We've made sure our application forms are commensurate to the grant amounts. So if you're applying for the Next Steps professional development, the forms are much simpler than if you're applying for a multi-year application. And this will really ensure equity and access to funding. We've cut down the number of questions. We've changed the reporting cycles. So those on multi-year funding for 2 and 4 year will look at a 2-year reporting cycle rather than the annual ones that you're currently on, which means less forward plans, less acquittals, much simpler forms, which is something that we're really, really excited about as well within this program. Over to you, Peter.
Peter, you're on mute.
My apologies. So we want to get the word out about these programs, and we've got a series of sector engagement activities planned over the next couple of months. We'll be rolling out a program of information sessions that will consist of both in-person information sessions as well as online webinars such as this. And the sessions will include Sydney, Western Sydney, and a number of regional locations in the first phase. Once guidelines are available on our website, you'll be able to book in pre-application meetings with the appropriate arts funding team. And these engagement programs are on our website, and there should be a link in the chat section soon. And we highly recommend that you book into these sessions and the locations that you're interested in attending. And a reminder that this webinar has also been recorded, and it's going to be available on the Create New South Wales website. So we ask you to please pass on to colleagues who weren't able to join us today to be able to access this webinar. And I'm also very pleased to let you know that today after 12 noon, we will be opening our expressions of interest for people to nominate for our artform boards. These are our really important assessment process for applications, and we're calling out to people to nominate to sit on these boards. We're also providing an opportunity for people to nominate others, as long as you speak to them first, to put them forward to sit on these boards as well. There'll soon be a link on our website that will take you through to the expression of interest form, as well as frequently asked questions and information in regards to these boards. Thanks, Brianna.
I think that's it from us. It would be great if we could go to some of the questions now that we have in the chat, and I think David Everest will let us know what they are.
Hi, yeah, look, there's a number of questions. Maybe we'll start with the transitional funding, and there were a couple of questions about the timeframes for that, particularly the annual funding.
So with the transitional funding, the last annual funding round will open in July this year, and applicants will be encouraged to apply for funding for 2025 for their annual program. If you're currently operating on a financial year, we understand that might be an 18-month program, and just make sure you include all your requests and all your needs, because you won't be able to apply for project funding if you are successful in annuals. So roll in any project requests that you might have had into your annual funding application ask as well.
A couple of questions about regional arts touring, particularly around the definition of regional. And whether regional touring also supports regional work to go to metropolitan centres.
Yes, absolutely. We've actually simplified the definition. So regional will be anything outside of Sydney and Western Sydney. So it will include Wollongong, it will also include Newcastle. And most definitely regional arts touring encourages regional applications for tours that will tour interregionally, as well as an opportunity for regional product to come to Sydney as well.
A Excellent. There's a question early on about the fact that now we don't put people's the names of recipients who are successful in the funding when we announce the funding.
That's a requirement now through a privacy consideration. We are able to publicise organisations who have been in receipt, but we need to de-identify individuals who have been successful in funding.
Right. There's a question, is there additional money attached to the new categories? Will we see an increase in success rates?
We're waiting for budget results before we can announce funding amounts, but we've certainly looked at our funding structure within the programs that we have on offer now with the new programs, and as we've discussed, there are increased limits that people can apply for. We're hoping that also the application process being a lot easier to apply into is going to open up these programs to a wider selection of people as well.
Excellent. There's a question, will there be a replacement for the quick response grants?
The professional development new grant that I spoke to earlier is replacing SPGs or small project grants. Also, in addition, the new work category that we have on offer is in response to what we were seeing coming through the small project grant applications. We were seeing more and more applications that were geared towards new work development rather than professional development. So we've created two clear categories within the new program. So one for professional development, one for new work, and they're going to be offered twice a year as discussed.
There's a question about the definition of Western Sydney and regional New South Wales. We've sort of covered that, but maybe.
Yeah, I think we will have that clearly identified on our website and frequently asked questions. But as I mentioned, we've got a clear definition now of of regional being everything outside of Sydney and Western Sydney.
And the definition of Western Sydney will be in the glossary of terms, which is identified via LGAs, which is consistent with what we've previously had.
A question mark around festival funding.
Festivals will absolutely be eligible to apply for any of the multi-year programs, as well as the key priority area projects as well. We will also continue to have a targeted festival artform board, which recognises the specific needs of festivals.
Also a question around 8-year funding. Is this restricted to the particular size of organisations?
There will be eligibility requirements around the 8-year funding, but it is inclusive of small to medium and larger organisations as well who fit within the eligibility criteria.
And a sort of follow-up question to that, will multi-year applications require strategic plans, and will there be an EOI round?
Yes, multi-year applications for 4-year and 8-year will require strategic plans. There won't be an EOI process. 2-year will not require a strategic plan, which is why we really encourage you to get in contact with us to talk through your programs, and also really consider where you might fit in terms of what's going to be the simplest and easiest application for you as well.
Great. A regional touring question. Do I have to get the gig first if I'm touring? The theatre hires are expensive. What do I do first?
First of all, plan out your tour and your proposed tour itinerary. You don't necessarily have to have them locked in, but we need to see an idea of where your tour is going, where you plan to present your work. So the short answer is no, you don't have to have that locked in, but we do need to see a schedule that you're proposing.
A question about Creative Steps funding. Can organisations auspice individual artists to apply for that funding?
Yeah, they most certainly can.
Can arts organisations that are not currently on annual funding now apply for annual funding?
We have that one last round of annual funding, which is transitional, which will be opening later this month. And so following that round, organisations who have been on annual program funding will be encouraged to look at the multi-year opportunities, and in particular, the 2-year multi-year opportunity.
Question from a small regional arts group that supports the local gallery. What program applies to them for project funding?
If they are not in receipt of multi-year funding, they can apply into the priority project funding category. There's an opportunity to apply in there. Obviously, regional is one of our priority areas, so they would fit comfortably within that area.
Just a question about Western Sydney. Does the Macarthur area sit in Western Sydney?
I can go and check that in our glossary. I don't know off the top of my head, but give me a minute. I will maybe ask another question and I will come back to you.
And which regional locations in the first phase?
For the consultation for the sector engagement, we'll be going to the Illawarra, we'll be going out to the Hunter area, going over to Bathurst and also up in the Northern Rivers region as well. And then we expect to expand that in the second phase of consultations as we lead up to the opening of the project rounds.
Is there funding range for transitional funding, and when is the close date? It's annual.
Yeah, the annual program will be the same as it has been, so you can apply up to a maximum of $200,000 for an annual program, and the close date will be in August, but I don't have an exact date yet, so you'll need to refer to the website for the exact date in August.
So yeah, another question about regional. Is the Central Coast considered regional?
If it's outside of Sydney, yes.
Question, are there any creative project rounds for projects that commence January 1st, 2025?
The first project round will be notified in March, so not for January, no.
And just getting more questions about whether Blue Mountains is considered regional.
Blue Mountains is considered Western Sydney, and I'm just putting the definition in the chat now.
Brilliant. We are a volunteer-run biannual regional event. Does this count against us for long-term funding opportunities?
I can't see why. No, not at all.
There are no information sessions south of Wollongong.
Not yet, no. So we're hoping that in the second phase of consultations, we'll be identifying other regional areas and we'll have them posted up as soon as they're locked in.
And just clarification around the transitional funding again, the funding amount for transitional funding for 2025, if orgs can't apply for project funding.
The transitional funding will be available for organisations only, so they will be able to apply for annual program funding, and that's up to $200,000.
Great. Will the money in the pots of money be declared up front, or will we still be applying for funds from a pot that we don't know how much it is?
Maybe a Karen question.
I'm really sorry. We're just having a fire alarm in the building. Can you guys do another question? We'll be done in a second.
Sure. Can anyone apply for multi-year regardless of current status? Is it a clean slate?
For 4-year and 2-year, yes, it is. You just will need to, and again, when the guidelines are released, we'll be able to go into further detail, but you just need to be operating as an organisation. So there are some considerations around that, and once the guidelines are public, we'll be able to talk through that detail.
Question about Cultural Access Program. Is Cultural Access Program the only project funding available to organisations if not touring? Can project costs be integrated into multi-year program applications?
Yes, is the answer to that. We would absolutely be encouraging organisations who have applied or have received project funding that should form now part of your multi-year ask. So if you apply for multi-year funding, everything that you would need over the period of 2, 4 or 8 years should be included in your application.
Our fire alarm is over, so we're happy to take that question. Sorry. Figures.
So the question was just about the budget, whether they're going to be set budgets for the categories that people will know about beforehand, or will this be as it is currently?
It will be as it is currently. We're working through that, but at the moment it will be there are set budgets for the different categories, but they won't be made public at this time.
When are the multi-year guidelines available?
The 8-year will be released when the 8-year applications open, which we are hoping will actually be this week. We'll let everyone know. And then the 4 and 2-year guidelines will be available shortly after that. We'll send a communication round to everyone, and also please, again, you can book in one-on-one sessions with the Key Arts organisation team, and also attend our face-to-face and further webinars that we'll be delivering over the next month. And as Peter said, there will be a phase stage to the engagement program. So closer to the 4-year opening dates, we'll run a series of 4-year information sessions, and closer to the 2-year opening dates, we'll run a series of 2 years. So we'll really try and be able to connect with you in a multitude of ways.
Next question, just confirming that multi-year recipients are also able to apply for regional arts touring.
Yes, they can.
Yep.
And what determines whether an organisation is eligible for 2-year, 4-year or 8-year funding?
There'll be a series of eligibility criteria that will be released once the guidelines are released, and you'll be able to see in much more detail. It does vary depending on whether it's 8, 4 or 2-year. And again, that's because the program is really designed to be accessible for new organisations as well as supporting existing organisations, either in 8, 4 and 2. The other advantage of this program is that it is also about supporting organisations to grow. So people might enter into the 2-year and then move to the 4-year and then move to the 8-year. So it's really seen as an organisational trajectory.
Thanks. There's a question about criteria. Have criteria changed at all, or are they still weighed towards public outcomes?
I can speak to the... Sorry, Brianna.
Yeah, Peter speaks to the project. I'll speak to the multi-year.
So with project criteria, yes, we looked at those, and the aim was to really embrace the idea of making things a lot simpler and a lot clearer. So we've really simplified the criteria. So we really want to get to the nub of why you want to do something, how you're going to do it. So the questions and the criteria are quite straightforward. We do have weightings across the criteria, and that'll all be outlined in the guidelines when that's released. But there is obviously, you know, a stronger weighting towards your idea, what it is you want to do, what's your passion. So we really want to hear that in the application.
In terms of multi-year, yes, the criteria have been simplified, and it is around organisational sustainability, it's around career pathways, it's around artistic development, but also capacity building, because we understand that particularly service organisations, have different outcomes to presenting organisations, and we will recognise that difference in the criteria as well as within the assessment process.
A question about project funding. Is there an interim funding round for projects?
No, we have to transition into the new funding programs, the new project programs. So the first opportunity to apply for that will be when that opens in August.
And will organisations who are successful in multi-year investment be able to apply for organisational project grants?
No, there won't be any organisational project grants. We will be absolutely recommending that organisations add any additional funding to their request for multi-year that they previously might have accessed through project funding. And again, it's to simplify this process. So you're just putting one application in for what you actually need, rather than having to put multiple applications in and multiple reporting that comes along with it. We really want to be able to streamline this program for applicants.
Question about regional touring. Are funds available for development of tours or just funds for touring?
Some of the funding can be applied to the development of tours, but the bulk of it will be about your tour, getting the tour out there, getting it in front of regional audiences.
A question about the Regional Arts Development Organisation Network. Are they now competing against other organisations?
Peter, do you mind if I
Sure.
take this one? Part of the feedback that we got from creative communities was about transparent and equitable processes and programs. So all organisations will now be entering a competitive funding round. However, we're really conscious that all organisations have different needs, different capacities. So we've designed the program to be able to take that into account. We're also ensuring that like organisations will be assessed against like. So a regional arts development organisation would not be assessed in the same category as a state significant organisation. We want to make sure that the scale and type of organisations that are assessed against each other are the same.
And a sort of follow-up to that, will funding for CASP funding be increased to a level rather than the same amount that it has been for 20 years?
This is the opportunity for all organisations that run devolved funding programs. Again, we're really saying to people, ask for what you need. So if there is a need in your community to increase CASP programming, then please put that request in as part of your application. And just so everyone on this call knows, CASP is the Country Arts Support Program, and it's a devolved funding program managed by the regional arts development organisations.
Question about professional development grants. Does this include short courses that are business focused from accredited RTOs that are specific to the artistic sector?
Yes, if your activity is about supporting and developing your career through that activity, then yes, it would fall within the criteria.
And just clarification again around the project round funding. Are there any other project rounds for decisions before year end, or is it on hold until March 2025?
I'm not sure if I quite understand the question, but to be clear, the next project round, the new projects will open in August, and then it'll be for projects that will commence in the new year. So again, that will be in the guidelines. So that's the next project opportunity for funding.
Will there be the same number of artform boards?
Yes, there will be the same number,
Yes.
but the categories, we're looking at those and looking at the art forms, and that's again in response to the changing sector. So looking at an opportunity to look at categories such as community arts and cultural development, and also looking at experimental, digital, immersive, and also light art. Other categories that we're considering for those boards. That information will be available when you're looking at the EOI process for nominating for our art form, our assessment boards.
Are there limits on multi-year funding? Will multi-year have CPI factored in particular for 8-year funding?
There are upper limits on each of the multi-year categories, and again, it depends on where an organisation may fit. So for 2-year, for really new organisations, there'll be upper limits of between 100 and 200,000. For 4-year, there'll be upper limits of 600,000. For the 8-year, there's a significant upper limit because there's a multitude of organisations that will be in that. So that's looking at a 6 million upper limit. There is the opportunity for 8-year for CPI to be applied, and that will be part of the guidelines. So we have really considered the changing landscape and what the needs of organisations are in designing this program.
A regional touring question. Do we need to get the regional touring venues confirmed before applying for the grant?
No, we need your schedule of tour and a clear indication of where your tour is going to, but we understand that sometimes they can't be locked in prior, but we would expect a really clear itinerary that you're identifying in your tour there.
There's a question asking for the exact dates for 2024 program funding to be released.
We will have we'll have the dates up as soon as we can, but the parameters that we're giving you when the month that these will open will apply.
De-identifying those who are successful is important. Can we alternatively ask for a letter of success or similar to add to our CVs?
I don't have an answer for that.
I think it's just a matter of providing a
add it to
letter. I
CV.
don't know why. I would imagine we would be able to do that.
It should be an easy enough process for us to confirm that you were successful in the grant.
Absolutely.
And it definitely is something that you should be proud of and having as part of your CV anyway, because it's a really important thing that you've got.
Question, is there any transitional funding for festivals for 2025?
Festivals should be applying to the 2025 annual funding round. Our current multi-year festivals have been are funded until the end of 2025. So anyone that's in annual funding or project funding should be applying to the annual funding round that will open this year.
A question about the eligibility criteria for multi-year funding.
When the guidelines are public, then it will clearly detail what that eligibility criteria is, because it is slightly different for 2, 4 and 8-year as well. And look, we're hoping that will go up as soon as possible, and as soon as it does, we will let you know.
And a question about Queanbeyan. Will Queanbeyan be eligible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Queanbeyan sits in New South Wales, so yes.
Yeah. Just clarification of what the 10 arts assessment boards are.
I think that will be up on our website as well, but Karen can speak to that.
If somebody in the call has the list, we can read them out.
Yeah.
I'll put it up into the chat, Brianna.
We can put it, yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
That might be the easiest way.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's a list of 10 of us.
First Nations question. Previously, First Nations applicants were required to submit additional support material that non-Indigenous applicants were not required to submit. Will this change?
Yes.
Yes.
We've definitely heard that feedback. That came through loud and clear, especially during our consultation period with creative communities, and we've definitely addressed that.
Will the artform boards be consistent with current committees, e.g. museums and history? How will they impact assessment pathways, e.g. boards to a multi-year panel or all grant types decided by a board?
All the boards will assess all of our programs categories. So boards will assess multi-year applications as well as project applications. In the event that the likely event where we have large numbers of applications, there's capacity for those boards to be split so that we were able to assign multi-year to some of that board, projects to the other. So there's an opportunity there to make sure that the board has capacity to assess across all the criteria, all the categories.
A question about writers' organisations in the Riverina. What avenue do they have to apply under the new categories?
They will have an opportunity to apply into the multi-year category. If they're not in receipt of multi-year funding, they have an opportunity to apply into the priority project areas that organisations can apply to into the project grants as well.
Question about, we are creating a new festival in September 2025. Which is the best grants to assist in the initial event and following annual events?
I would recommend applying for annual funding, and because that will enable you to deliver the festival across 2025. And also, just to let everyone know, I've just put the 10 artform boards in the chat.
Can you please discuss what support there may be for RADOs in this transition, and especially those going through staffing changes and recruitment?
RADOs have all been rolled over, so their funding extends into 2025. And RADOs, as discussed, will be applying into the multi-year opportunities and most likely into the 4-year multi-year opportunity. But RADOs have their funding rolled over until the end of 2025.
And in terms of application support, as Peter said earlier, we absolutely, across the teams, will meet with everyone. We will have the engagement program that we will deliver. We'll also have a series of templates and support materials to help people through this process. We absolutely will be there with everyone in this transition and are available.
A question about small to medium arts organisations outside the priority areas. What is their pathway for project grants?
Sorry, could you repeat that again, David? I've lost.
Yeah, so this is for small to medium organisations outside the priority areas. What is their pathway for project grants?
Their opportunity is through organisations who don't receive multi-year funding, is through our priority area projects. So they will need to look at their program and their activity, that they're identifying which priority area that they want to address with their activity. Alternatively, they could look at multi-year opportunities, and as Brianna's talked through, the 2-year, the 4-year opportunities in particular, they could look at.
And the 2-year has been simplified to address new organisations or smaller organisations who might not be asking for the larger amounts as well. So we've really made it as easy as possible for organisations to be able to access our funding.
A question from a grassroots regional arts and community cultural development not-for-profit charity who have been established over 25 years. How do we apply and compete when we are utilising multi-art forms with a focus on social and behavioural change outcomes?
That sounds like a project that would fit comfortably within the priority area project category that we've created in projects. So once those guidelines come out, have a good look at that. As Brianna mentioned, there's an opportunity for pre-application meetings to talk through. It sounds like there's a few moving parts there, so I'd really advise to meet up with one of the staff here at Create to talk that through, but it sounds like it would sit comfortably within our priority area project areas.
And we have art forms around community arts and cultural development as well, which looks at those outcomes that you're speaking to in that comment here.
A question about strategic plans. Will we be able to provide our own strategic plan, or are they specific, made specifically in accordance with our requirements?
We've really tried to align what will be required within strategic plans with what organisations particularly may have submitted to Creative Australia already. If you have a 2025 to 2028 strategic plan, we're not asking you to go and write a new one. We will absolutely accept that as well. We just say check your strategic plan against what we'll be requiring, and I could probably guarantee most of the things will be in there. There may be an appendix that you want to add to speak specifically to New South Wales because we are New South Wales state government, but that's also will be your choice.
Will there still be a Create New South Wales holiday workshop program?
That program was in partnership with regional youth, and at the moment there's no indication that will be rolled out again at this point, but a bit of a watch this space.
Are all organisations currently funded by Create being put through this program, or are some exempt?
Karen, yes is the short answer, but I'll hand to Karen.
Yes, they are. All organisations funded through the Arts and Cultural Funding Program will go through a competitive process from now
on. As a multi-arts organisation, we've had to carefully choose which art form area we apply to for annual program funding and then try for projects through other art forms. Assume we'll need to apply under multi-arts for both now as part of an annual program with inbuilt projects, and I'm wondering whether the cap would be the same given potential increase in demand.
For 2025, the annual program will be for $200,000 for that 1 year. Then if you're putting in your multi-year application at 2, 4 or 8, you will have the opportunity to apply for a greater funding amount through those programs.
Touring, again, do all touring and performances have to happen within New South Wales, or is it Australian-wide or international possible?
At this stage, New South Wales. So all tours will need to take place in New South Wales.
Do you need to be an AP recipient to be eligible for multi-year? Not sure what AP.
No.
Annual program?
Annual
No,
program, yes. Do you need to be
Again-
annual program?
Again, there's certain criteria between 8, 4 and 2 years. So you would be looking at what is the best fit for your organisation.
What is the best contact for Create New South Wales, first-time applicant?
We have contact numbers on our website, and for email, arts.funding is the best email to come through to, and that'll get to the arts funding team.
Can we apply as a multi-facility council for various facilities if they are managed by one overarching council, or is it each facility doing an application?
Again, this would be your choice. For multi-year, you could put one application in for all of it, or we'll accept separate applications from different business units within council.
A question about the definition of new work in regards to creative steps. What category does funding fall under for works that have already premiered other than touring?
If the work is already out there, it probably won't be competitive in new work development. It's really about supporting work from the ground up, so from the idea stage. So new work development can be for development, or it can be for some presentation, but it's really about encouraging that sort of the powerhouse of arts and cultural activity and development across the state. So it's really, the focus is on new work.
But if you're a presenting organisation who might be applying for multi-year, then you would be including those co-pros within your application as well, even if they're potential ones.
I'm conscious that it's 12:30.
I think probably the best way forward is, as Peter said, on our website is a list of all of our contacts. Or Karen, unless you want to add something.
No, just that I would encourage everyone to have a look at the website for further information. There will be a lot more detail there in the coming days. And I would also really encourage everyone to have a look at the EOI process for the artform boards, and have a think. If you'd like to be involved in this assessment process, please put in an EOI, because we really want to encourage a broad range of people from the sector to be involved with us in the assessments of these new programs going forward. Peter, Brianna, if there's nothing else, I did just want to thank everyone for joining us today, for making the time. There will be other opportunities. There will be another webinar, 2 webinars coming up to talk more specifically about the 2 areas of multi-year funding and project funding, and then the face-to-face opportunities when we come out to the different areas to speak in more detail. But thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
And can I just chime in and also say thank you, but also say that there were an awful lot of questions that that were listed here that didn't get answered. So I'm conscious that we'll look through this and make sure that our FAQs reflect the answers to the questions that have been asked in the session. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.